तो हेलो एवरीवन एंड वेलकम बैक टू द चैनल। सो आज हम वीक 3 का देखेंगे, जावा वीक 3। एंड जावा वीक 3 में टॉपिक्स उतने ज़्यादा नहीं है जितने कि उनमें इम्पोर्टेंस है। मतलब देखने में बड़ा लगता है बट सॉरी क्या बोल रहा हूँ, लाइक देखने में लगता है बहुत कम चीज़ें हैं बट जो चीज़ें हैं वो काफ़ी वास्ट है, ध्यान से पढ़ना। सॉरी। सो फर्स्ट टॉपिक इज फिलोसॉफी ऑफ स्ट्रक्चर्ड प्रोग्रामिंग एंड ऑब्जेक्ट ओरिएंटेड प्रोग्रामिंग। तो फिर स्ट्रक्चर्ड प्रोग्रामिंग और ऑब्जेक्ट ओरिएंटेड प्रोग्रामिंग में फ़र्क क्या है? So first thing is structured programming consists of designing a set of procedures or algorithms to solve a problem. So basically structured programming में क्या होता है, we break it down into smaller and smaller problems and then try to solve them individually, and then जो पूरा हमारा solution set बनता है सारे solutions को मिला के, that ultimately solves the biggest like the whole problem. So that is how structured programming works. Oops, on the other hand, object oriented programming on the other hand, what it does is it creates objects and the objects interact with each other to give the ultimate solution. Every object has similar specific functionality exposed to its users and a hidden implementation. So objects don't like the constructor, you do not know how objects are created, like how the object constructor is creating the object in internally. You do not know that. You just call the constructor, you just call the methods applied to it, and you just get the results. You do not know how it is working internally. That's what this line is saying. So ये सब सिंपल सी चीज़ें पढ़ लेना है ना। यहाँ पे जैसे एग्जांपल दिया, जैसे आइटम, ऑर्डर, ये these are types of classes, okay? And then like the nouns are the classes, the nouns signify the class items, classes, and then there are verbs like items are added to orders, orders are shipped or cancelled, payments are applied, and these are the procedures that we apply on those specific objects. So that's all it is trying to say. पढ़ लेना, ये सिंपल सी चीज़ है। Then comes relationship between classes, okay? Python में देखा होगा कि we most of the time we inherit from another class. Inheritance is a really profound topic in object oriented programming, and वो हमें भी देखेंगे inheritance क्या होता है। हमने week 1 week 2 में भी देखा है थोड़ा बहुत inheritance, बट यहाँ पे हम पूरा inheritance देखेंगे। तो इससे स्टार्ट करते हैं। Inheritance, what the inheritance is, the class whose properties are inherited. Inheritance is reusing the properties of an existing class, okay? So I already have a class, for example parent. We already say it's parent child relationship, so I will take that example only. Let's say I have a parent, and this child will will be a part of him, or like the genetic constitution of him will be the same as a parent. So he is basically reusing what the parent has already developed or developed. For example, if he has any genetic mutation, that also will get transferred to the child, like that. So we already have a class and we are developing another class which extends the properties of the above class. So that's what inheritance is. Or you can see it like this way, like you have inherited property from your dad, and your dad has in fact inherited properties from your grandpa, from his dad. That's also an example of inheritance, okay? So that is inheritance. The child whose properties are inherited is considered as parent class or superclass. An inheriting class is called child or subclass, obviously. So if employee and then manager. So since manager is extending, or manager is inheriting from employee, it is called child class. Notes are uploaded on the drive, okay? So what does a subclass do? A subclass extends a parent class. So it really extends a parent class. So whatever the parent class can do, it adds more to the functionality in a way. Inherits instance variables and methods from the parent class. ये एक important चीज़ है, take note of this. Cannot see private components of parent class, okay? So if the parent class has some private variables, for example these two, private string name and private double salary, then the child class, manager in this case, manager will be defined later, manager cannot access or cannot see these name and salary variables because they are defined as private inside the parent class, okay? obviously the child can do everything the parent can and more. So okay, so it can add more instance variables and methods, can also override methods. Okay, we'll see examples of these. Okay, like here it is. An employee class has two private instance variables, a constructor to set up the object, accessor and mediator methods. And देख लेना ये है ना, सिंपल सी चीज है. ओके, अब यहाँ पे important चीज है manager. Okay, so now we are defining another public class, that is manager, that extends employee. Extends in a way is inheriting only. Okay, in Java we say that it extends another class. Okay, so manager extends employee. So as soon as you write extends employee, it gets access to all these. Okay, like set name, this set salary, all methods and variables also. Okay, if there are any instance variables. Okay, so now we are defining a constructor, public manager, string n double s string sn. Okay, so we are giving it three parameters and then calling super with n or s. Okay, so this thing, what it does is, what this tongue does, this calls employee constructor. Okay, with these two parameters. Okay, because employee takes two parameters. One is name, second is salary. Okay, so we need to pass a string and a integer or a double to this constructor. Okay, so that's why we're defining. We have first manager. We first define the constructor of a manager with three variables, because two of them will be used for the parent class. Okay, and then another one for the manager itself. Okay, so first thing, and then we call the constructor, because these two will be passed on to the parent constructor to create the variables or set the variables, and then the third variable will be assigned to the third instance variable. Okay, so that's how constructor is working here. Super just calls the parent. Okay, if there is any function that we wanna call, we can also call that using super. Okay, then okay, so we are already setting a secretary here. Okay, so many people ask why we are having a separate function just to set the secretary. So what happens is, let's say I have one manager and the manager hasn't changed, but the secretary has changed. The old one has resigned and the new one has joined. So in that case, we won't create another object, or we won't call another constructor. Okay, so at those moments the set secretary will be very useful when secretary changes for same manager. Okay, so it लिखा हुआ है यहाँ पे कि it sets manager name is equal to n and salary is equal to s. Since we use super, we can use private instance variables of parent class. Okay, why? If we cannot directly access, okay, we need to access super. Okay, we need to access using super, because as we said, the child class cannot access the private instance variables. Okay, so these two are private instance variables of the parent class. That's why we need to use super. As soon as we use super, we can also access the private instance variables that is defined in the parent class. Okay, then okay, so after that, then get secretary, just printing the secretary. After that, there are is recording it. Yeah. So after that, there is another double. See, these two are methods that are defined exclusively for the manager. Okay, this do not have anything related to secretary. Okay, the parent class does not have anything related to the secretary. The secretary is only defined for the manager class. So these two are exclusive. Okay, what we read that the child class can do everything the parent can and more. Okay, so it is obviously doing what the parent can. Okay, setting the name and salary. Okay, and then it is doing more. It is defining its own instance variables, and then it is modifying or accessing them. Okay, this also is the this is overwriting. Okay, so these two are the exclusive methods, and then here bonus is this. Okay, but here we are also multiplying it by 1.5. Okay, so it is overriding the class for the parent. Okay, we can also do this. that if we need specific functionality for a specific procedure, we can redefine that in the child class. Okay, so bonus is defined differently here. So when we call the bonus method on a child of like or a object of manager class, then this bonus will be called instead of the parent one. Okay, manager is a subclass of employee. Managers are special types of employees with extra features. Manager objects inherit fields and methods from employee. Every manager has a name, salary, and methods to access and manipulate these. Okay, this is important. Every manager is an employee, but not vice versa. We can use a subclass in place of superclass. Okay, type of subtype. Okay, here this thing. See, employee. Okay, we are defining an employee object. So what we are telling here is, just with this line, what we are telling the variable following this. Okay, what this says is, this employee word, what it says is, this thing says that whatever is following this, whatever variable is following this word will be an employee object. Okay, so E is an employee object for Java, but what we are defining a manager. Okay, we are saying new manager. Okay, but we can do this is correct. Why? Because manager is a subtype of employee. A manager is an employee. Okay, every manager is employee. We can use a subclass in place of superclass. We can use a subclass in place of superclass. Okay, what should basically what we know, what this should have been here, in case we are defining it the correct way, or we are defining based on what we have learned so far. Employee, basically we are telling that this will be an employee object, and then there should be new employee. Okay, with its details. This is what we have learned. But employee is a superclass. Okay, we can use any subclass in place of the superclass. So we are defining a manager, but storing it is an employee object. Okay, that's all this means. Okay, but this is wrong. Manager M is equal to new employee, because not every employee is manager. Okay, every employee is not a manager. Okay, but every manager is an employee. We can use subclass in place of superclass. Okay, but superclass in place of subclass cannot be done. Okay, then there comes another thing called static type checking. Static type checking is, so let's read what it says first. Okay, the variable E here is defined as a variable of type employee. Okay, yes, the variable E is defined as a type of employee. Therefore, it can only call methods and access variables which are available in the class employee. Okay, so since what the method is defined, which class it is being referred to, it is being referred to the employee class. So E can only access the methods and the variables that are described inside the employee class and not the manager class, because ultimately Java thinks E is the employee. Okay, E is an employee object. Okay, so that's what it says. E dot get salary is fine. E dot get secretary is not fine. Why? Because get salary is defined here inside the employee class, which is the parent class, but secretary is inside the manager class. Secretary is inside the manager class, which is a subclass, which is okay. So that's why it is not letting it use. Okay, the object, whichever word is here, or whichever class is there, only those objects or methods defined inside that class will be permissible for that object following that. Okay, for the variable following that. Okay, if we have done manager E is equal to new manager, then it is fine. Okay, obviously, because then we are defining it as manager class. Okay, then there comes another thing called dynamic dispatch. Dynamic dispatch, also known as runtime polymorphism or inheritance polymorphism. This is mechanism where the Java, this is an mechanism where the Java calls the appropriate implementation of an overwritten method. Okay, so this is important. Okay, static, what it checks is, let me remove all this. So I will. What does static check? Static type checking, or E dot get salary. What it is checking is, it is checking the what is here. Okay, what the whatever here is, that it is being checked. Okay, which class is defined here. Okay, why? Because e dot get salary is defined only once in parent class, e dot get secretary is defined only once in the subclass. Okay, so that's why it is checking whichever it is. Okay, now dynamic dispatch. Okay, dynamic dispatch is a different thing. Okay, e dot bonus, we are calling e dot bonus. Now what e is? E is basically an employee. Okay, Java thinks it is an employee. Okay, for Java it is an employee, but in reality, IRL, what it is it is a manager. Okay, so if there is a overridden method, okay, if there is an overridden method, for example, bonus is defined here too, and bonus is defined here too. Okay, in both classes the bonus is defined. So what Java will do is, then if in case of an overridden method, Java will focus on this. What is actually here, like what it actually is. Okay, which class it actually belongs to instead of what it is being stored as. Okay, this is called what it is being stored as, and this is the actual class it belongs to. Okay, so since E is actually a manager, it will call the bonus inside the manager and not the bonus inside the parent. Okay, that is dynamic dispatch. Okay, this invokes the method bonus defined in the manager class since the actual object belongs to the manager class. A variable is of type manager. Okay, in case of static methods, this is not true. Static methods means defined only once. Okay, so just like these two, so the get salary and get secretary. Okay, next thing comes function signatures and method overloading. Okay, method overloading we have read, we have studied before also. This is basically okay, I will show you with the example. Okay, so first thing is signature of a function is its name and the list of argument type that it takes. Okay, so what is the signature? Signature is the unique identification of a function. Okay, if I am saying this thing print name, so the name is print name. Okay, so this is the name of the function and it takes a string as name. Okay, it just takes an input as string. Okay, so now this whole thing uniquely identifies this function called print name. Okay, this whole thing uniquely identifies this function. Okay, like in Java, like in SQL, we saw that primary key. Okay, at many times a combination of two or more columns was giving you the unique index for that row. Okay, so that's what it says by that's what it means by the signature. Okay, that this whole thing is actually defining or actually identifying this function. Okay, is its name and the list of argument that it takes. Okay, and after that comes method overloading. Method overloading is a feature that allows a class to have two or more methods with the same name but in different parameters. Okay, देखो यहाँ पे different parameters का मतलब बहुत important है, because हमने अभी क्या कहा, what did we just say? We said that this whole thing, the name along with the input, okay, uniquely identifies this function. Okay, but if I do the same thing again, same thing, okay, this same thing, then there is no unique identifiers between these two. This is essentially the same thing. Okay, so that's why this is not allowed. But print name, let's say I say INTI, okay, or let's say string only, but let's say string only, string n, let's say, but also I pass another INTI. Okay, so now this is different because this whole thing has two parameters, so this whole thing now becomes different from print name, print n with just one variable. Okay, so now these two are different. Okay, so now at the time of calling, if I am calling, let's say, obj.print name, and I'm passing just one string hello, then what Java says is it has only one parameter, so it will call this one. Okay, But now I do this again, but I give it hello comma 5. Now the Java knows that it has two parameters, so now it will call this one. Okay, so method overloading is this only, that we have the same name for both functions, but we have different parameters. Or yeah, we have different parameters, like it takes only one and it takes only two. Okay, so at the time of calling, if we have only one parameter, then it will call this one, the first one, and if we have two parameters, then it will call the second one. Okay, we can also define more, print name with 3 parameters. Then if we give 3 parameters, then it will call this one. Okay, now comes method overriding. There are different things. Method overloading is different, method overriding is different. Method overriding is what we saw before with the bonus class. Okay, what we did is we rewrote the bonus for the manager. Okay, manager added its own functionality for the bonus class, bonus procedure. Okay, here let's say we have a class animal. It has a procedure called make sound, and it will just print out that animal makes sound. Okay, now we say cat extends animal, that means that cat inherits animal. Okay, public void make sound. See here it is same, make sound, make sound. Okay, so this is method overriding. The subclass is overriding the method used by the parent class. Okay, a cat meows. Okay, क्या कर रहा है, जो सब क्लास है वो बेसिकली अपना एक अलग डेफिनेशन दे रहा है उस प्रोसीजर को. सेम प्रोसीजर नेम है मेक साउंड, बट कैट के लिए उसका फंक्शन बॉडी अलग है एंड एनिमल के लिए इसका फंक्शन बॉडी अलग है. तो जावा को आप कैसे पता चलेगा कि लाइक मेरे को एनिमल का कॉल करना है या मेरे को कैट का करना है? दैट डिपेंड्स ऑन हाउ इट इज डिफाइंड. ओके, हियर वी आर डिफाइनिंग एन एनिमल ऑब्जेक्ट. ओके, न्यू एनिमल, सो दिस विल कॉल द एनिमल. ओके, animal dot make sound. Okay, this will call this one, so let's say it first. Okay, and here we are defining it as cat. Okay, new cat dot make sound, so this will call cat dot make sound. Okay, let's say 2 and that's it 2. Okay, we'll try different things with this. Okay, we'll try in the practical video. Okay, for now just know what method overriding is and what method overloading is. Okay, next comes typecasting. Okay, now one more important thing, that is called typecasting. टाइपकास्टिंग दो तरह के होते हैं, डाउनकास्टिंग एंड अपकास्टिंग. अपकास्टिंग मैंने ऊपर बता रखा है, आई विल एक्सप्लेन दैट लेटर, बट टाइपकास्टिंग हमारे सिलेबस में उतना है नहीं, हमारे में डाउनकास्टिंग ज़्यादा है, तो डाउनकास्टिंग को हम बेटर देखेंगे. अपकास्टिंग ऊपर पढ़ सकते हो, एग्जाम्पल देकर समझाया हुआ है. अब यहाँ पे एग्जाम्पल क्या हुआ था, हमने क्या किया था, हमने किया था एम्प्लॉय E इज इक्वल टू न्यू मैनेजर. हमने ये किया था, याद है ना, हमने ये काम किया था, हमने डिफाइन तो किया था, हम एक नया एम्प्लॉय बना रहे हैं, वी आर क्रिएटिंग ए न्यू एम्प्लॉय ऑब्जेक्ट, बट इंस्टेंट व्हाट वी पास्ड इज द मैनेजर, दैट इज द सब क्लास. वी पास्ड अ न्यू मैनेजर. ओके, so what E holds currently, E is an instance of employee class, but it actually holds a manager. Okay, so now let's say this was a mistake. Okay, or this was correct, but later on we wanted it to also be able to use the procedures defined in the manager class, like we saw now. हमने देखा था वहाँ पे it wasn't being able to call the get secretary. Why? Because this was a static method and it was defined in the manager class and not the employee class. So that's why it was not able to. So to make E able to use get secretary, we need it to be a manager. Okay, so we need a manager here. Okay, we need it to be a manager class. Okay, so that's how we do it. This is the syntax, manager E. Okay, we say manager. Remember this thing, we were converting let's say float, no, not float, int, I is equal to int and f. Let's say float f is equal to 23.3f. Okay. So remember this thing, INTF. This is how we were casting it. Okay, that is the same syntax here. Okay, just instead of variables or data types, variable data types, we are using the classes. Okay, so what this essentially is saying is E is a manager. Okay, it tells Java that E is a manager. Now we have defined it as employee earlier, but forget that E is a manager. So now since E is a manager, so manager can access the get secretary method. Okay, so now this becomes valid. Okay, so E is now a manager reference. Earlier it was just holding a manager, but it was of employee class. Okay, it was originally employee class, it was just holding a manager, but now it is a manager reference by itself. Okay, so that's what typecasting is. Okay, upcasting I'll show you, but it won't matter much, I guess. I have written upcast somewhere. Okay. Upcast is assigning a subclass object B to a superclass reference. Okay. So let's say A is A object is equal to new A. Okay. Wait, one second. Oh, sorry, this was upcast only. Sorry, I forgot that. This whole thing was upcast only. Okay. The same example is said here. Okay. A is in class. Okay. A and B are classes. Okay. A and B are classes. Okay. A obj1 and B is inheriting from A. Okay. New B 2.718. Okay. So what it says is object 1 is a reference of type A. Object 1 is a reference of type A. Okay. But it refers to a B object. Okay. So object 1 is originally an object of type A, but it is holding an object of type B. Okay. Upcast is assigning a subclass, object B to a superclass reference A, assigning an object, so a subclass object to a superclass object. Okay. Assigning a subclass to a superclass reference. Even though object 1 is of type A, the actual object is B. Okay. That's what upcast is. And then downcast we just saw. Okay. Yeah, this was downcast. Manager E. Okay. Now to check. Okay, this is the syntax of checking. Okay, if E is instance of manager, so if E when it will return true, when manager E is equal to new manager. Okay, or if E is an employee, if we have done manager E. In these two cases, it will give true. Okay, so it is basically checking if E is an instance of manager. Okay, so ये basically देख रहा है कि E manager class का instance है या नहीं, E manager class को belong करता है या नहीं, और ये दोनों conditions में ही सिर्फ ये true return करेगा. Okay, now comes subtyping versus inheritance. Okay, subtyping and inheritance हमने पहले भी देखा है, week 1 में देखा है ना. सब टाइप और इनहेरिटेंस के तो वो वहां से देख लेना, मैं ये वापस नहीं समझा रहा. सेम एग्जांपल है. पब्लिक प्राइवेट में हमने पहले देख रखा है, वीक 2 में हमने पूरा पब्लिक प्राइवेट का हमने अच्छे से प्रैक्टिकल वो देख रखा है, तो ये भी मैं नहीं देख रहा, ये भी देख लेना है ना, या मैं प्रैक्टिकल में बता दिखा दूंगा है ना. बट अगर थ्योरी जाननी है प्राइवेट पब्लिक का तो वहां से देखना, क्योंकि मैंने वीक 2 में ऑलरेडी ये सब समझा रखा है. प्राइवेट क्या है, पब्लिक क्या है, मेथड कैसे डिफाइन होता है, स्टैटिक क्या होता है, स्टैटिक कैसे यूज होता है, मैंने प्रैक्टिकल में दिखा रखा है ना. एक नई चीज है फाइनल, है ना. फाइनल में यहाँ पे बता देता हूँ. फाइनल मॉडिफायर क्या करता है, ये भी एक मॉडिफायर है, जैसे कि हम स्टैटिक void यूज करते थे ना. फाइनल इज ऑल्सो मॉडिफायर, बट इट इज यूजुअली यूज्ड फॉर कॉन्स्टेंट्स. ओके, फॉर एग्जांपल इफ आई एम डिफाइनिंग अ क्लास मैथ, तो उसमें पाई की वैल्यू जो होगी या ई की वैल्यू जो होगी या log 10 बेस 2 की जो वैल्यू होगी वो सारी कांस्टेंट होंगी. इट वोंट कीप चेंजिंग. ओके, या ऐसे चेंज होनी भी नहीं चाहिए. तो इन सो फॉर दोज वी कैन यूज फाइनल. ओके, पब्लिक फाइनल पाई इज इक्वल टू 3.14. सो नाउ सिंस वी हैव डिफाइंड इट विद फाइनल मॉडिफायर, कोई भी प्रोसीजर या कोई भी कुछ भी इसको चेंज नहीं कर सकता. इट इज नाउ द कांस्टेंट. ओके, सो इफ वी डू पब्लिक चेंज बाय एंड दिस विल नॉट बी अलाउड एंड इट विल थ्रो एरर. क्या एरर आएगा वो हम ट्राई जब करेंगे प्रैक्टिकल में तब देखेंगे, है ना. सो दैट वाज ऑल फॉर फाइनल. ओके, अच्छा ये तो हो गया जब हमने वेरिएबल के सामने यूज किया. अब मान लो हमने एक प्रोसीजर के सामने फाइनल यूज किया, तब वो क्या करता है. सो फाइनल मॉडिफायर व्हेन यूज्ड इन फ्रंट ऑफ अ मेथड मींस दैट मेथड कैन नेवर बी ओवररिटन इन एनी ऑफ द सब क्लास. ओके, सो बेसिकली सेम दैट it tells Java that do not let this procedure be overwritten by anything, by any subclass. Okay, like let's example के लिए employee में हमने देखा था कि we had a bonus. Okay, we had a bonus procedure and manager was overriding it. Okay, manager overridden it, it multiplied it by 1.5. Okay, so if employee had final bonus, अगर ये syntax होता, if this was the syntax of the function definition inside of employee class, then manager would not have been able to do this. Okay, this overwriting. Okay, अब एक इम्पॉर्टेंट चीज आता है ऑब्जेक्ट क्लास. हम ऑब्जेक्ट के बारे में बोलते रहते हैं कि दिस इज एन ऑब्जेक्ट, दिस इज एन ऑब्जेक्ट. सो एक बात ध्यान रखना, जावा में हर कुछ ऑब्जेक्ट है. जावा में एवरीथिंग दैट यू डिफाइन, एवरीथिंग दैट यू राइट इज एन ऑब्जेक्ट. एवरी वेरिएबल इज एन ऑब्जेक्ट, एवरी क्लास इज एवरी ऑब्जेक्ट, और जो भी तुम कर रहे हो दैट इज एसेंशियली एन ऑब्जेक्ट. ओके, सो इन जावा ऑब्जेक्ट इज अ बिल्ट इन क्लास that serves the base class for all other classes. Okay, this is base class. Okay, so this is the base class, and जो भी हम करते हैं class A, class B, manager, class employee, class manager, this all is inheriting this one. Okay, by default it is a super class of every other class. It is a super class of every other class in Java. Okay, so as a result every Java class is either a direct या indirect subclass of the object class. Okay, अब ऑब्जेक्ट है like it is a class, so it will have definitely have some of the methods defined inside it. Okay, so कुछ काम के जो हमारे प्रोसीजर्स हैं ऑब्जेक्ट क्लास के वो यहाँ पे डिफाइंड है. इक्वल्स फिर हम अगर ऑब्जेक्ट पास करें, है ना, जैसे मान लो दो ऑब्जेक्ट है, एक ऑब्जेक्ट है एम्प्लॉय का, एक ऑब्जेक्ट है मैनेजर का, है ना. मान लो इसका E है, इसका M है, तो अगर हम करें E डॉट इक्वल्स O, तो this will be wrong, है ना, क्योंकि it is not equal. Okay, this method is used to compare two objects for equality. Okay, we can also override this. Okay, if you need specific functionality you can override it, like if inside of class employee we can override it. Okay, then toString, this method returns a string representation of the object which gets printed. इसका एग्जांपल देखेंगे और समझ आएगा कैसे होता है. हैश कोड इज जस्ट हैश कोड रिटर्न करता है. ये दोनों उतने काम के नहीं है जितना इतने ये काम का है, तो अगर भूल भी जाओ ये दोनों तो कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता, बस इसको ध्यान रखना है ना. दिस वाज ऑल द थ्योरी. एक बार ढंग से और देख लो, है ना, एंड इसके बाद आएगा प्रैक्टिकल वीडियो. थैंक यू, ऑल द बेस्ट.